Hi, everyone. I have a really special guest here today. We're going to be talking with attorney Susan Cohen. She is the founder of the immigration practice at her law firm, Mintz. She wrote this book, Journeys from There to Here, which is why we're here. We're going to be talking about that today. And she also happens to be a cousin of mine. So I am so excited. Susan, thank you so much for being here.
Natalia, I'm thrilled to be here to join you, and it's great that we're doing this together with your audience. Hi, everybody.
We were just chatting before. This is such an important topic to discuss. It seems like immigration and these kinds of issues that you deal with on a daily basis are front and center headlines all the time. So I actually wanted to start with this quote of yours from the book, which really struck me. And you write, the reduction in immigration unravels the very fabric of the nation. A nation that's stronger when immigrants are able to contribute and weaker when they're unnecessarily locked out. So, why did you decide to write this book and why now?
I really feel that one of the United States' great gifts and one of the aspects of our country and our democracy that makes our country so great is the contribution of immigrants. And that so many people in the country are the descendants of immigrants is a testament to how important immigrants are to the country. But depending upon which administration is in power, the ability of immigrants to come to the country and the barriers that can be thrown up, whether they are legal or not, can really dramatically impact and reduce not just the number of people who can legitimately immigrate to this country, but it can also really negatively impact the fabric of the law and the rule of law in the United States. But I wrote the book in the era of the Trump administration because, in my personal experience, the way that the law was abused and the anti-immigrant rhetoric that was used by that administration, I found to be extremely dangerous, not just for immigrants, but for everyone in the country, because it really promoted a lot of racism and hatred and also a lot of unfounded myths of the nature of immigrants in terms of what people they are, whether they contribute or not to the country. So I felt actually that I had to write it.
And I'm so glad that you did. We'll get into kind of more of these stories in a moment, but your book actually, speaking of the Trump administration, it starts with the Muslim ban and you tell a very personal story. Can you kind of walk us through that night and the impact that this ban had on your firm? Because it's crazy to talk to someone who was like really directly involved in litigation on this insane kind of catastrophe.
Yeah, President Trump had only been in office for a week when he issued this ban. And we heard that something might be coming down, and it sounded like egregiously crazy, like you said, seemed so obviously against the law, what we heard they were going to do. And this ban came out with no notice, like nobody knew, not even the administrative agencies of the government. So nobody was prepared for it, including all the people outside of the country who were on flights or scheduled to fly into the country, including green card holders, which that means that the person's been granted the permanent right to live in the United States for the rest of their life. And yet they were attempting to ban people mostly from Muslim countries, and it was outrageous. So a few of us decided that if this really did happen, we had to be prepared to fight it like immediately. I actually was at a party for a very good friend. I was on the dance floor and I got the phone call that a request for an emergency judge had been granted. And I raced to the courthouse and it parked the car illegally in front of the courthouse and ran in. I was sure my car was going to be towed, but it ended up not getting. I was so lucky that when I walked out, we got a temporary restraining order from the court against the Trump administration, barring them for a period of time from enforcing this ban. And a handful of lawyers in different cities were doing the same thing, but we were doing it in Boston, and our order applied to everyone who would be flying into Boston's Logan Airport.
What was the process like? What happened after? You said this restraining order was temporary. So what kind of came after that?
It's a long story, but this really signals something very fundamental about the way that particular administration operated. We had a federal court order commanding Customs and Border Protection to allow the planes to land. It was a court order. That's the rule of law. Like the judge issues an order, the government's supposed to follow it. But it took 3 days for the Department of Homeland Security to actually follow our order. They actually defied the federal court order for the first 3 days. So we had to keep fighting that. But that kind of set the tone for the administration, which, in my opinion, was not, although it claimed to be law and order oriented, really did not respect the rule of law.
Yeah, that's the big irony here, but we won't
Yeah.
get into the politics of it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
then I'll go all day.
For another day.
Yeah, exactly. But that is just wild to me. On a personal note, I was not born in this country. I was a green card holder almost my entire life until 2016. I think I became a citizen.
Yay.
That is the only, yeah, it was really cool to like go through that process. I know what it's like to be a green card holder. You're an American. It's absurd. I don't even have any words for it. But what's also crazy to me is I'm white and I don't face the same discrimination as a green holder than other green holders do. And I mention this all the time, and I'm sure a lot of people watching, many of my followers will recognize this story. But my now husband, Derek, is Asian American, and people ask him all the time, where are you from? And he's born and raised in America. Like, he's more American than me. But nobody ever
Yes.
asks me where I'm from, which is strange because we're a country of immigrants and there's really no image of what an American is, but people still treat one another differently based on what we look like, or we make assumptions, which is just crazy because it's just ironic that I'm the green card holder, he's the citizen.
Right.
So I just like strange to me.
You're a living example of the kind of discrimination or reverse of discrimination that
yeah.
people experience on a regular basis in this country, unfortunately. And one of my concerns when I wrote the book was that the flames of hatred and bias were being fanned like madly, very much by the words that were spoken by the president and people that worked for him. And it's dangerous. There's always been a little bit of that, but the messaging that any particular administration who has the bully pulpit in this country can have a really huge and detrimental impact across the whole country. And that's one of the things that was really worrying me. And that's why I wrote the book, to try to shed some light and the real truth about immigrants by these personal, really intimate stories of real people, so that people can see case by case what they're like and what they go through, rather than faceless, nameless stereotypes.
Yeah, I wanted to move on to that on a little lighter note, which is this book is at the end of the day a joyful, beautiful book. I love the format that you use to write it, because it's not this like academic, out of touch legal text that like we don't understand. It's through stories that any one of us can relate to, and you go through the individual stories of some of your clients, as well as the legal process to how you manage their case, which I think is really interesting. But above all, it's just stories of regular people that could be just like us. And I was wondering if you could share maybe one of the stories that particularly stands out to you, and then I'll share one of mine.
Okay. So Audrey is one of the people I focus on in the book, and she happened to be an asylum seeker. But I have some asylum seekers profiled in the book, and other people who come in different ways, like people who are extraordinary in their fields, like scientists and artists and writers and things like that. But Audrey is a remarkable woman, and I got to know her through the asylum organization that I work with in Boston, which helps asylum seekers who can't afford a lawyer. And she is from Rwanda, and she and her family had been through the Rwandan genocide. She and her family are members of the Tutsi tribe. But the remarkable thing about her is that despite what she suffered in Rwanda, she was dragged away before her family, raped in front of her family, and hauled off to a camp to be brainwashed by the members of the Hutu tribe that had attacked her family at a funeral. She managed to escape after being wounded, and she ran through the night into Uganda. The things she saw and suffered through were enough to make anybody just fall apart forever. But the thing about Audrey and so many other people I have been just so privileged to get to know and to work with is that eventually she made it to the United States. She had to because she couldn't go home because her life was really in danger. And she came legally with the visa and she applied for asylum. And the lawyer who she found at first was apparently not very good. And he ended up losing her case and then losing all touch with her, and she couldn't reach him. And then she found Per, and we really were happy to jump in and try to overturn the denial of her case. And we worked really hard. And through this process, it took years and years. Audrey just held on. She put one foot in front of the other, and she managed to survive long enough for us to win her case. It's a really complicated legal story that's in the book, but we became such good friends through that process. And she would say over and over again that if she could survive this and get through this process, that she was going to devote her life to helping other people. She said, I love this country so much. I want to do whatever I can for it. And then she started working with orphans and people who have been abandoned by their parents. And that's what she does now. She gives back every day of her life to help kids in the community. And I've had so many other clients like Audrey who have been through things like that you and I think couldn't possibly imagine. I've had many clients whose whole families have been slaughtered in front of them, and yet they still want to give back at the end of the day if they can find a place here.
Yeah, that's a recurring theme that I've seen in this book with the clients that you've worked with is how grateful they are at the end of this and how that energy channels into doing good and giving back. They're just such remarkable people.
Right. And getting back to the original point that you were making at the beginning of our interview about what do immigrants bring to the United States and why is it important, I truly believe that the vast majority of immigrants are improving the United States and that the bad apples, and there are some, the people who might commit crimes or do bad things, are a tiny fraction, less than 1% of the entirety of all the immigrants who actually immigrate and get green cards and citizenship in this country. And so it's so wrong to just try to generate fear and hatred by pointing out examples that might be the extreme rare cases.
You outline very clearly in your book how challenging it is to go through
Yes.
this process and
Yes.
to become a legal citizen, and it takes years. So for media or people in the spotlight or on social media or wherever it may be to be like, oh, these immigrants are coming across for free healthcare, it's just not founded in any sort of reality. And I think it's so important that you show how challenging it really is. Like, these people are crossing seas and mountains and borders and risking their lives just to get a free handout. Like, that is not what you're
No,
going through.
absolutely not. And a large percentage of asylum seekers are truly fleeing life or death situations that qualify them under our laws for asylum. They're totally legitimate. There might be some that aren't, but I've only represented people where I am sure that they have a bona fide case, and that lots of immigrants who apply for asylum do have, legitimate fear of being assassinated or shot. So many cases still right now that I'm working on with people, amazing people who are human rights activists or judges, people who have tried to actually stop corruption in their countries, unfortunately unsuccessfully, because the corruption runs so deep in some of these countries that their lives are in danger. Things like that. People fighting for democracy and human rights.
The exact values that we claim to stand behind.
Right. And like you said, in many of the cases in my book, the applicant, the immigrant, did everything. And unfortunately, in all too many cases, the officer who happens to be working on their case for the government made a mistake and messed things up for people. And that's why their cases came to me, because I'm that kind of lawyer where people come to me when all else has failed. It's unfortunately a fairly frequent thing that a lot of people also, I think, don't understand or realize, that sometimes the reasons the cases don't get approved is it's because the government makes a mistake.
You've highlighted a lot of that as well in the book. One story that stood out to me, especially as a soon to be mother, was this one woman who was going through immigration. And I think she was a scientist.
Yeah,
I believe you remember this. Yeah,
she's an unbelievably impressive scientist from
like
MIT.
amazing woman. Yeah. And she
Yeah,
was going through with her 6 month old baby, and the baby was born in the US, so automatic citizenship. And I can't remember what her status was. I'm sure you'll clarify. But the immigration, they're like, oh, the baby can stay, but you can't. And it's like,
right.
okay, let me just drop off my baby at baggage claim. Like, it makes
Like,
no sense.
world is a mother going to
Like,
leave a 6-month-old infant with a customs officer and fly
yeah.
back to? Yeah, no.
Like, what is she supposed to do? So it just made me think, like, how do you deal with laws that just don't even make any, like, maybe not just are morally wrong, but don't even make any sense? Like, how
Yeah,
do you as an attorney address these circumstances like this?
yeah. In that particular case, it wasn't the law that was wrong; it was the officer.
The officer. Yeah.
And that happens
Like, it's so stupid.
just as often. A lot of people are at the mercy of one officer who was either in a good mood or in a bad mood, paid attention to the training in that section of the law that they had to apply when that person's in the front of them with their passport, and didn't pay attention and never learned the law. So it's like really important to have a good immigration lawyer, unfortunately, because you could be in a situation where you're standing there and he's either going to let you in or not let you in. And she was lucky enough to be able to call me. It was like 11 or 11:30 at night, but it woke me up, and I was able to explain to him that he was misinterpreting her documents, which he was, that she had every right to enter, which she did. People are at just like random mercy of officers in these situations. So I always tell people they need to understand before they come why they're entitled to come in. They should, be very clear and either have a letter from a lawyer explaining that they're entitled to enter, or they should know what to say if they're asked any questions. And educating themselves is really important for immigrants.
This has just been so inspiring and informative and interesting, honestly. I love this book. I hope anyone who's interested in hearing these stories and learning more about this, will pick it up. I'm going to include links for everything. Before we sign off, is there anything that you'd like the viewers to know or to leave with?
I think I just would want people to know it's actually a fun book, even though the stories sound so intense. There's a lot of funny moments in some of the stories, and uplifting moments and joyous moments, and all the cases end really happily. But for people who want to learn more, I hope people could visit my website, which is susanjcohen.com, where I list in the resources tab a huge number of really great nonprofit organizations that you might want to check out if you're looking for one in your area to get involved or learn more about immigration. And I've got a lot of other interesting articles and pieces on the website as well. And I'm happy if anyone would want to reach out to me. I'd be delighted to have an email exchange with folks.
That's so nice. Thank you for all of the work that you do as well. It's really because of people like yourself and your colleagues and other attorneys all around the world that people are able in this country to gain the rights that they're entitled to. And like you said, make the country better for all of us. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And this was really fun.
And you're an example of that, Natalia. Thank you.
And yourself a proud immigrant.
Yeah, thanks so much. This has been great.